At my sister's wedding, my parents demanded I hand over my penthouse keys right in front of 200 guests. When I said no, Mom slapped me so hard my earring flew off. I walked out, made one call. An hour later, a man walked into the reception. And when my mom saw who it was, she screamed, "Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Brenda, and I'm 32 years old. What happened at my little sister's wedding a while back, well, it's the kind of story that starts as a whisper and ends as an earthquake. Thank you for being here, for letting me share this with you. I have a feeling that some parts of this story, they might feel uncomfortably familiar to some of you. Picture this. A grand ballroom, shimmering under the weight of a dozen crystal chandeliers. 200 guests dressed in their finest, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the air thick with the scent of thousands of white roses and decades of unspoken family tensions. That's where my old life ended. It ended with the sound of my mother's hand connecting with my face so hard that my diamond earring, a gift I'd bought myself after closing the biggest deal of my career, flew across a polished marble floor and skittered under a table. The reason for this public display of affection? I refused to hand over the keys to my $2 million penthouse, right there, in the middle of the reception speeches, as if it were a party favor. But here's the part nobody in that room saw coming. An hour after I walked out, bleeding dignity but not tears, the CEO of one of the city's largest investment firms walked in. He wasn't a guest. He was an emissary. And when my mother, Brenda, saw who it was, her scream was a sound I'll never forget, even hearing it secondhand. He had something very specific to say about what he'd just witnessed on a Facebook live stream, and it was about to change the course of all our lives. Forever. To really understand, though, I have to take you back to that morning. The morning when I still believed I was just attending my little sister Heather's perfect wedding. My day started the way it always does, at 5:30 a.m., in the quiet sanctuary of my penthouse. The city was still a tapestry of twinkling lights below as I sat with my first cup of black coffee, watching the sky slowly blush from indigo to a soft, hopeful pink. This was my time. No emails, no conference calls, just the peaceful hum of the city waking up 45 floors below. This place, this view, was the result of a decade of grinding work, of sacrifices I'd made that my family couldn't possibly comprehend. And today, I was leaving this sanctuary to step into the one place I never felt at home, a family gathering. I spent an extra 10 minutes picking out my dress. Not because I cared about fashion, but because it was a strategic choice. The navy silk sheath was professional, powerful, and understated. It was a piece of armor. It said, "I am not the person you think I am." I paired it with the diamond earrings, small, elegant studs. Each one represented a closed deal, a personal victory. The drive to the Grand View Hotel took 40 minutes. I had a business podcast playing softly through the Tesla speakers, but I wasn't listening. I was rehearsing. Rehearsing my smiles, my polite deflections, my non-committal answers to the inevitable questions about my love life and my little job in the city. It was a performance I'd been perfecting for years. I pulled into the valet at exactly 8 a.m., a full 3 hours before the ceremony. In my family, being on time meant being late, and being early was the only way to avoid my mother's first volley of criticism for the day. As I walked through the gleaming lobby, the scent of lilies and lemon polish filling the air, my stomach twisted into a familiar knot of anxiety. The ballroom was even more opulent than I'd imagined. The theme was ethereal garden, and they had spared no expense. Towering arrangements of white roses and hydrangeas stood on every table, their perfume almost cloying. Gold-rimmed plates were set perfectly, the silverware gleamed, and a string quartet was already warming up in the corner. It was beautiful, a fairy tale brought to life. A fairy tale I'd quietly helped fund with a $50,000 wire transfer 3 months ago when my dad had casually mentioned how things were getting a bit tight with all of Heather's wonderful ideas. No one ever said thank you. It was just expected. Brenda, finally. My mother, Brenda, didn't look up from the seating chart she was frowning at. She didn't hug me. She never does. Her welcome was a slow, critical scan from my sensible heels to my professionally styled hair. Her lips thinned. That dress. Honestly. Couldn't you have chosen something softer? A nice floral, perhaps? You look like you're about to fire someone, not celebrate your sister's wedding. I resisted the urge to point out that the dress cost more than her last vacation. I smoothed down the flawless silk. It's a classic silhouette, Mom. Elegant. It's severe, she corrected. And that color, so draining. You need to wear more pink, Brenda. It would help. She finally turned away, her dismissal complete. Now, Heather. Heather looks absolutely radiant in her gown. A proper bride. You should see how she glows. She was born for this day. The comparison wasn't new. It was the foundation of our family. For 32 years, I was the daughter who was too ambitious, too independent, too masculine in her eyes. I was the one who got a business degree instead of an engagement ring. Heather was the princess. Sweet, traditional, a first-grade teacher who was now marrying her high school sweetheart, Kevin. She was everything our parents wanted, a perfect reflection of their values. I was a puzzle they'd long given up trying to solve. Brenda, make yourself useful and check the seating arrangements, my father, Walter, called out. He was adjusting his tie in the reflection of a mirrored pillar, looking flustered. But for heaven's sake, don't start reorganizing everything like you always do. Your mother spent weeks on that chart. Weeks, I thought, biting the inside of my cheek. It looked like it had been assembled in 5 minutes by someone who actively disliked every guest. I walked over to the large, ornate board. It was worse than I thought. A social minefield. My Aunt Lorraine, a sweet woman who had gone through a bitter, soul-crushing divorce, was seated at the same table as her ex-husband, Uncle Gene. Their split had been the talk of the town for years, a brutal affair involving private investigators, fights over the family silver, and a custody battle over their golden retriever that made national news look tame. Their lawyers had made a fortune. Placing them together wasn't just an oversight, it was cruel. And right next to them? Table 9. My father had placed 2 of his biggest business rivals, men who were currently locked in a nasty bidding war over a municipal contract, at the same table. It was a recipe for a Cold War fought over bread rolls and butter knives. Pointing this out, however, would only cast me as the difficult one, the one who always thought she knew best. So, I put on my corporate smile. It looks great, Dad, I lied, my voice betraying none of the internal alarm bells. I'll just double-check the place cards are all in order. For Heather. Using my sister's name was always a good way to de-escalate. Everything was always for Heather. What they didn't know, what I'd never bothered to correct, was the scale of my life. In their minds, I was a mid-level manager at some anonymous company, living in a small city apartment. The truth was, I was the vice president of development at Finch Capital, one of the most powerful private equity firms in the country. I managed a portfolio worth billions. I spent my weeks negotiating with heads of state and titans of industry. My last bonus alone could have paid for this entire wedding twice over. But in this ballroom, I was just Brenda, the disappointing older sister. Admitting my success would have been seen as bragging, another one of my unfeminine, competitive traits. Family comes first, Brenda, Dad said, appearing at my elbow. He placed a heavy, proprietary hand on my shoulder. It's the most important investment. You'll understand that when you have your own family. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. If you ever settle down, that is. The jab was as predictable as the sunrise. My unmarried status was a constant source of shame for them. It was a loose thread on the perfect family tapestry they tried to present to the world. Walter, leave the poor girl alone, Aunt Lorraine said, joining us. She'd always been kinder than the rest, but even her defense was tinged with pity. Not everyone can be as lucky as our Heather, finding true love so young. I focused on straightening a fork that was already perfectly straight. The whispers started around me, a familiar chorus. Still no ring on that finger, I see. It was Aunt Janet, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. All that time in the big city, you'd think she'd have met a nice doctor or a lawyer by now. Poor Brenda, another voice clucked. Thank goodness she has Heather to give her grandchildren. My cousin Todd, a man whose greatest ambition was to perfect his golf swing, sauntered over. He smirked, his eyes glinting with the casual cruelty he'd mastered since childhood. Hey, Brenda. Maybe if you spent less time in boardrooms and more time in, normal rooms, you'd have a +1 today. A wave of sycophantic laughter followed. I felt a hot flush of anger crawl up my neck, but my face remained a calm, placid mask. I wanted to tell them about the investment banker who told me my ambition was cute but unsustainable for a marriage. Or the surgeon who checked his phone every time I mentioned a work achievement. I wanted to scream that being single was a victory, not a failure. But what was the point? Oh, she's just very particular, my mother explained to anyone listening, her voice laced with false sympathy. Always has been. Too picky for her own good. I just smiled, adjusted another centerpiece, and let the poison wash over me. The pre-ceremony mingling was a masterclass in passive aggression. I felt like an exhibit at a zoo, with relatives circling, poking, and prodding at my life choices. The main event happened by the champagne fountain, where Aunt Janet, the family's self-appointed Grand Inquisitor, cornered me. So, Brenda, dear, she chirped, her voice loud enough for the entire group to hear. Brenda tells me you're still in that little apartment of yours in the city. Must be so, cozy. The word cozy was delivered with the same inflection one might use for infested. The circle of relatives, Uncle Gene, Cousin Todd, and a few others, leaned in. This was the part of the show they loved, a deep dive into Brenda's sad, lonely, and humble city life. It made them feel better about their own predictable, suburban existences. I decided, for once, not to lie by omission. I kept my voice quiet, devoid of any bragging tone. It's a penthouse, actually, Aunt Janet. The reaction was immediate and explosive. It started as a snort from Todd, then blossomed into a full-throated, incredulous roar of laughter. Aunt Janet, clutching her champagne flute, had to brace herself against the fountain, her shoulders shaking. A penthouse, she shrieked, wiping a tear of mirth from her eye. Oh, Brenda, you and your wild imagination. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. A penthouse. That's a new one. Just then, Heather glided over, a vision in white lace, her smile perfectly innocent. She linked her arm with our mother's, who was watching me with a look of weary exasperation. Oh, you can't take Brenda seriously, Heather said, her voice like tinkling bells. She likes to exaggerate. It's how she copes with, She let the sentence trail off, implying a whole host of pathetic reasons. Remember last year, Mom, when she told us she was buying a Tesla? Can you even imagine? I did buy a Tesla. It was a Model S Plaid, and it was currently sitting with the valet downstairs. But I just smiled. The mask was so firmly in place I could barely feel my own face. Brenda's always been ambitious, Mom said, sighing. She said the word ambitious like it was a terminal illness. Too ambitious, really. It gives her ideas. Now, there's nothing wrong with a modest apartment, kiddo, Uncle Gene added, patting my arm with a condescending thud. He'd been a mid-level insurance salesman for 40 years and considered himself a captain of industry. Not everyone can afford luxury. There's no shame in that. We can't all be high flyers. As he spoke, my phone buzzed in my clutch. I discreetly pulled it out. It was a notification from my building's concierge app. Good morning, Ms. Hayes. This is a reminder that your delivery of the custom art piece from the gallery is scheduled for tomorrow between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Please let us know if we need to provide the movers with special access. The message was a portal to my real life. A life where I owned a 4,500 square foot penthouse on the 45th floor, a home I had purchased with a single wire transfer after closing the Singapore deal. A home with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the entire city. A home that had been the subject of a 4-page feature in Architectural Digest last month, titled "The Sky is the Limit." I could have opened the article on my phone. I could have shown them the photos, the gleaming marble countertops, the infinity-edge bathtub, the custom-built library. But I just looked at Uncle Gene's smug face and realized the truth: proving them wrong wouldn't earn their respect. It would only fuel their resentment. My success was a threat to their comfortable world order. "You're right, Uncle Gene," I said, my voice smooth as silk as I slipped my phone back into my clutch. "There's no shame at all in living within your means." Heather giggled, a triumphant, tinkling sound. "See? My sister's finally learning to be more realistic." The irony was so thick, I felt like I could choke on it. I excused myself from the laughing hyenas and found a quiet spot by one of the grand ballroom windows. Down below, the city spread out like a circuit board, alive with energy and purpose. From this vantage point, I could just make out the gleaming, needle-like silhouette of my residential tower, a titan of glass and steel that pierced the sky. My home. My sanctuary. 10 years. A whole decade of my life had been poured into the foundation of that building, metaphorically speaking. I remembered my first day as an entry-level analyst at Finch Capital, fresh out of business school. I was 22, armed with a degree I'd paid for with scholarships and part-time jobs, and so terrified I thought I might throw up in the lobby. I remembered the 80-hour weeks that became the norm, fueled by cheap coffee and a desperate, burning need to prove myself. I remembered red-eye flights to Tokyo, sleeping in my suit on the plane to be ready for a 7 a.m. meeting. I remembered living on takeout noodles for a year to save every penny for my first investment property. I remembered the sacrifices. The weddings I'd missed. The friendships that had withered from neglect. I remembered breaking up with a man I thought I loved because he'd told me my career was a hobby I'd eventually have to give up for a family. He'd wanted me to get a real estate license so I could have a flexible schedule for the kids. The memory still stung. That penthouse wasn't just concrete and glass. It was a monument to every single one of those sacrifices. It was proof that the girl they all dismissed as too much had taken that too muchness and built an empire with it. It was proof that I didn't need their approval, or their money, or their connections. Every single square foot of that place, from the Italian marble in the kitchen to the silk rugs in the bedroom, was paid for with my own success. The thought of giving it away, of just handing the keys to Heather like some trinket, felt like a betrayal of that 22-year-old girl who had been so scared but so determined. It would invalidate every late night, every missed holiday, every ounce of effort. It would make me what they always wanted me to be, the perpetual backup plan, the family ATM whose only purpose was to facilitate the happiness of their golden child. I thought about the respect I commanded in boardrooms, the way seasoned executives listened when I spoke. The power I held in my professional life felt like a fantasy compared to the utter powerlessness I felt in this room. Here, I was just Brenda. Too masculine, too career-focused, too difficult. And single. Never forget single. If I gave in now, if I surrendered the one thing that was unequivocally mine, the one thing that symbolized my hard-won independence, I'd be confirming everything they believed about my place in this family. I'd be agreeing that my life's work was nothing more than a convenient resource for them to plunder. My phone screen lit up again. It was a picture message from my assistant, Maria. She'd gone to my apartment to water my orchids, a task she insisted on doing herself. The photo was of the view from my living room that very morning, the sun rising over the city, casting a golden glow that made the whole world look peaceful and full of promise. She'd added a caption, "Your sanctuary awaits your return, boss." Sanctuary. That was the word. It was the one place on earth where I wasn't being measured against my sister, where I wasn't a disappointment to my parents. It was the one place where I was simply Brenda Hayes, a woman who had built something extraordinary, entirely on her own. And I would rather burn it to the ground than let them take it from me. I was trying to find a quiet corner near the kitchens to check some urgent emails from the Tokyo office when I heard my mother's voice, honeyed and proud, carrying across the ballroom. She was holding court with a group of my father's business acquaintances and their wives, painting a perfect family portrait. "Our Heather," she was saying, her hand resting on her heart. "She's everything a mother could want. So graceful, so caring. Did you know she volunteers at the Children's Hospital every weekend? She has such a gift with children. And now she'll be such a wonderful wife, building a home, starting a family." The guests murmured their approval. Mom went on, a breathless monologue listing Heather's accomplishments, her teaching degree, from the state college I'd secretly helped pay for, her charity work, 2 hours a month, her talent for baking cupcakes. It was a carefully curated highlight reel. Not once did my name cross her lips. It was as if I didn't exist. The irony was, I was the invisible architect of so much of this day. My connections had gotten Heather's wedding featured in the city's most prestigious bridal magazine. My hotel loyalty points had secured them the presidential suite for their honeymoon, a $5,000 a night upgrade. I was the family ghost, a silent benefactor whose contributions were accepted without acknowledgement. "Such a beautiful family," one of the wives said. "You must be so proud of your daughter." "Oh, we are," Dad replied, stepping in to place a proud arm around Mom. "Heather has made us so happy." Daughter. Singular. Not daughters. It was a slip of the tongue that revealed everything. I felt a familiar ache and turned to walk away, but then I heard my father's voice drop to a conspiratorial whisper. I froze, melting back into the shadows behind a large floral arrangement. After the main toast, he murmured to Mom, "That's when we'll do it. I'll make the announcement about the penthouse." My blood ran cold. It felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over my head. "Are you sure Brenda will agree?" Mom whispered back. I could hear the faint tremor of anxiety in her voice. She knew me well enough to anticipate resistance. "She won't have a choice," Dad said with a chilling, dismissive confidence that made my stomach clench. "Not in front of 200 people. Think of the optics. She's too proud to make a scene at her own sister's wedding. She'll have to say yes." It was an ambush. A publicly staged, emotionally manipulative ambush. This wasn't a spontaneous, generous thought. This was a premeditated plot to corner me, to leverage my love for my sister and my aversion to public drama to steal my home. Then, my mother delivered the final, devastating blow, a line that would echo in my head for the rest of the day. "Besides," she said with a dismissive little sigh, "what does a single woman like her need a giant penthouse for, anyway? It's not like she has a husband or a family to fill it." The casual cruelty of it, the way she erased my entire existence and reduced my home to an empty shell because I didn't have a man, it was breathtaking. But in that moment of profound hurt, something else was born, a cold, hard, crystalline resolve. The pain was real, but the clarity it brought was a gift. They had just declared war. And I had no intention of losing. The reception was in full swing. The band was playing a soft jazz number, guests were chatting and laughing, and the air was filled with the clinking of glasses and the scent of expensive perfume. Then, my father, Walter, stood up from the head table. He moved with the practiced confidence of a man used to being the center of attention. He picked up a spoon and tapped it gently against his champagne flute. The high-pitched, crystalline chime sliced through the ambient noise. One by one, the conversations faded. The band trailed off mid-song. 200 pairs of eyes turned towards him. He beamed, soaking in the attention. "Friends, family," he began, his voice resonating through the microphone with practiced warmth. He was a master at this, the benevolent patriarch. "Brenda and I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate this joyous day with us. As we watch our beautiful daughter Heather embark on this new journey with Kevin, our hearts are just so full. He paused, letting the sentiment hang in the air. People smiled, some dabbed at their eyes. As you all know, for Brenda and me, family means everything, he continued, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on Heather. It is the bedrock of our lives. And there is absolutely nothing we wouldn't do for the happiness of our children. Children's, plural. He used the word, but his loving gaze never once flickered in my direction. My stomach, which had been in a tight knot all day, now felt like a block of ice. I knew what was coming. That's why, he said, his voice swelling with emotion, we are absolutely thrilled and humbled to announce an incredibly generous wedding gift. Our older daughter, Brenda, has graciously, and with a full heart, agreed to give Heather and Kevin her city penthouse to start their new life together. The room exploded. It wasn't just applause, it was a standing ovation. A roar of approval and admiration washed over the head table. People were cheering, whistling, their faces glowing with delight at this display of sisterly love and family unity. It was the perfect, heartwarming moment. Heather, the consummate actress, pressed her hands to her chest, her eyes wide with feigned disbelief. A single, perfect tear rolled down her cheek. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice catching. Her fiancé, Kevin, who looked genuinely stunned but pleased, wrapped his arm around her and kissed her forehead. Then, Heather picked up her own microphone. "Brenda," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. Are you serious? The penthouse? For us?" And just like that, the spotlight swung. Every single eye in that room, from my own relatives to my firm's most important clients, turned to fixate on me at table 4. I was pinned in place, the center of a drama I hadn't written. They were all smiling, waiting, expecting me to stand up, to cry, to confirm this beautiful, selfless act. My father wasn't done. He raised his hand for quiet. "Brenda, come on up here, sweetheart," he called out, waving me forward. "Let's have the whole family together for this special, unforgettable moment." The applause started up again, a relentless, rhythmic pressure. This wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. They had built a beautiful, gilded cage of social expectation around me, and now they were waiting for me to walk right into it. I looked at their smiling faces, at the tears in my aunt's eyes, at the approving nods from my father's business partners. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a public execution of my independence. Slowly, deliberately, I placed my champagne flute on the white linen tablecloth. The soft click seemed to echo in my ears. I rose to my feet. The room fell into a hushed, expectant silence. The string quartet had stopped playing. The only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioning and the frantic, silent beating of my own heart. I could feel the weight of 200 expectations, 200 pre-written scripts for how this scene was supposed to play out. I did not walk towards the head table. I remained standing by my chair, a solitary figure in a sea of watching faces. "I'm sorry, what was that?" My voice was calm, clear, and carried easily across the silent room without the aid of a microphone. It was the same voice I used in boardrooms when a junior executive presented a flawed proposal, polite, questioning, but with an underlying edge of steel. My father's practiced smile faltered. Just for a second, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face before he plastered the jovial expression back on. "Your penthouse, sweetheart," he said into the mic, his voice a little too loud. "For Heather and Kevin. Your generous wedding gift." "That's interesting," I said, my tone still perfectly level. "Because this is the first I'm hearing of it. This wasn't discussed with me." A low murmur rippled through the ballroom. It started at the tables closest to me and spread outwards, like a virus of confusion. People shifted in their seats. Smiles began to look strained. My father's face started to turn a blotchy red. He was losing control of the narrative, and he hated it. "Brenda, this isn't the time," he said, his voice a low growl into the microphone. "Don't be selfish on your sister's wedding day. The last 6 words were spoken with emphasis, a clear message to the audience: she is the villain. I agree, this isn't the time or the place, I said firmly. Which is why I'm surprised you chose to bring up a private financial matter here. We can discuss this later, as a family. There's nothing to discuss. My mother, Brenda, suddenly lunged for the microphone, snatching it from Dad's hand. Her voice was sharp, brittle, and laced with panic. It's a wedding gift from the family. We decided. My property is not a family decision, I stated, each word clear and deliberate. And I haven't agreed to anything. The murmurs grew into audible whispers. I could hear them clearly now. What is she doing? How could she? Right in front of everyone, so selfish. Heather, seeing her prize slipping away, turned up the waterworks. Her eyes, which had been merely damp, now produced a flood of perfectly photogenic tears. Brenda, she sobbed into her microphone, her voice trembling. I don't understand. I thought you'd want me to be happy. Your happiness shouldn't be dependent on my home, Heather. It's just a property. Dad boomed, his frustration boiling over. He was practically shouting now. You're successful, you can just buy another one. And that was it. The final condescending dismissal. The assumption that my life's work, the very symbol of my struggle and success, was just a disposable asset he could reallocate at will. The years of being minimized, of being treated as a resource rather than a person, all came to a head in that single, infuriating statement. A cold, dangerous calm washed over me. Then you buy her one, I replied, my voice quiet but cutting. You could have heard a pin drop. Then, a collective gasp. Someone at table 3 literally clutched their pearls in a gesture so cliché it was almost funny. The wedding photographer, who had been hovering uncertainly, seemed to realize he was witnessing the shot of a lifetime. He started snapping pictures furiously, the flash of his camera creating a strobe effect, freezing the horrified and fascinated faces of the guests. My mother looked at me, her face a thunderous mask of fury. She descended from the elevated head table, not walking, but stalking. She moved with the predatory grace of a lioness whose kill had been threatened. The beaded gown shimmered under the chandeliers as she crossed the white marble dance floor, the microphone still gripped in her hand like a weapon. Brenda Hayes, her voice boomed through the speakers, causing several guests to physically flinch. The sound was distorted with rage. You will not ruin this day. You will not embarrass this family in front of our friends and colleagues. I'm not the one making a scene, Mother, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I stood my ground as she approached. I would not back down. We raised you better than this. She was only a few feet away now, close enough that I could see the frantic, pulsing vein in her temple. We gave you everything. A good home, an education. You gave Heather everything, I corrected her, the truth finally spilling out, raw and unfiltered. I earned what I have. I paid for my own education with scholarships and 2 jobs. You ungrateful, she caught herself, her eyes darting around at the sea of shocked faces, at the phones that were now discreetly being raised to record the unfolding drama. She took a breath, trying to regain control. Her voice dripped with a forced, poisonous sweetness that fooled no one. Sweetheart, she cooed into the microphone, her knuckles white. Just give your sister the keys. It's such a small thing. Don't make this ugly. No. The word was small, but it was absolute. It was a wall of granite. It was the end of the conversation. My mother's face cycled through a storm of emotions, disbelief, frustration, rage, and finally, pure, unadulterated humiliation. She had been publicly defied by the daughter she thought she could control. The entire ballroom held its breath, a collective study in suspended animation. You will do this, she hissed, momentarily lowering the microphone so only I could hear her words, each one laced with venom. Or so help me, you will regret the day you were born. Or what? I asked, not out of defiance, but genuine curiosity. What threat did she think she had left? What power did she think she still held over me? She raised the microphone to her lips again, her eyes blazing with a desperate, wild fire. "Everyone," she announced, her voice trembling with rage. "My daughter, it seems, has forgotten the meaning of the word family. She has been corrupted by money and success." She then lowered her voice to a dangerous, final whisper that the microphone still caught, a whisper meant for me but broadcast to all. "Give your sister the keys. Now. No. You selfish, ungrateful girl." The words exploded from her, the last vestiges of control gone, replaced by years of raw resentment. "After everything we've done, everything we've sacrificed for you, you can't do this one thing. You are a disgrace to this family." She was close enough now that I could smell her perfume, the same suffocating floral scent she wore to every important occasion, a scent I associated with criticism and disappointment. She was close enough to see the years of bitterness burning in her eyes. The slap came without warning. It was a blur of motion. Her hand connected with my cheek with a force that snapped my head to the side. A sharp, ugly, cracking sound echoed through the ballroom's perfect acoustics, amplified 100 times by the live microphone she still held. My diamond earring, the one I had bought myself to celebrate the closing of the Singapore deal, was ripped from my earlobe. It flew through the air in what seemed like an impossibly long, silent arc, a tiny star tumbling through space, before it hit the white marble floor with a delicate, lonely ping that sounded as loud as a gunshot in the dead silence. 200 guests gasped in perfect, horrified unison. Then, nothing. Complete, absolute, deafening silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I stood perfectly still, my cheek on fire, feeling the hot, stinging imprint of my mother's fingers spreading across my face like a brand. The photographer had stopped clicking. The waitstaff stood frozen, trays of half-poured champagne balanced in their hands. My mother's hand remained suspended in the air between us, as if she, too, was shocked by the violence of her own action. Her ragged breathing was the only sound in the room, picked up and broadcast by the microphone still in her other hand. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or shout. I didn't even bring a hand to my burning cheek. I simply stood there, in that vast, deafening silence, and let them all look. I let them see the red handprint blooming on my skin. I let them see my mother's shocked, ugly face. I let them see my father, half risen from his chair, his mouth agape. I let them see my sister Heather, her hands pressed to her mouth, her crocodile tears for once replaced by what might have been genuine surprise. I let the silence be my testimony. Slowly, with a deliberation that felt monumental, I turned my head and looked down at the floor. 10 feet away, my earring lay sparkling under the chandelier light, a tiny, brilliant casualty. I began to walk towards it. My heels clicked on the marble, each step a small, sharp report in the silent room. One click. Then another. The sound was methodical, relentless. It was the sound of a decision being made. I reached the spot, bent down gracefully, my movements fluid and unhurried. I picked up the small diamond stud, my fingers steady. Then, I carefully, and with great purpose, put it back in my ear. The small prick of pain as it went through the abused lobe was grounding. The simple action took maybe 30 seconds. It felt like an eternity. I straightened up, smoothed the front of my silk dress, and looked directly at my mother. She had finally lowered her hand, but she still gripped the microphone like a drowning woman grips a piece of driftwood. Her face was a chaotic mixture of defiance and dawning, terrifying horror. She was beginning to understand what she had just done. "Excuse me," I said, my voice perfectly steady, perfectly calm. It was not the voice of a victim. It was the voice of a CEO closing a chapter. Then, I turned my gaze to the head table. "Congratulations, Heather," I said, my voice carrying across the room. "I truly hope your marriage brings you all the joy you deserve." I walked back to my table, picked up my small clutch, and turned towards the grand ballroom exit. I wasn't running. I wasn't fleeing. I was making a strategic retreat. I was walking with the same measured, confident pace I used when leaving a boardroom after a successful, hard-won negotiation. "Brenda," my father's voice, suddenly weak and cracking, called out from behind me. "Brenda, wait!" I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I didn't even break my stride. Behind me, the dam of silence broke. The ballroom erupted into a cacophony of chaos, voices rising in shock and outrage, chairs scraping against the floor, someone crying hysterically. It might have been Heather. I didn't care. I just kept walking. The moment the heavy, ornate ballroom doors swung shut behind me, cutting off the noise, I was in motion. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were steady, my purpose clear. I hit the first number on my speed dial. I knew from his earlier text about the live stream that he was aware of the situation. He was on standby. He answered on the first ring. "Brenda," said Alistair Finch, his voice the calm center of my storm. "Alistair," I said simply, my voice devoid of emotion. "Green light." There was no hesitation on his end. "Understood," he replied. "Our legal team is ready." "How much time do I have?" "Give me 45 minutes to get home," I said, stepping into the waiting elevator. "I want to be in my own space when the fallout begins." "Are you all right?" he asked, a rare note of personal concern in his professional voice. I instinctively touched my still-burning cheek. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional wreckage. "I will be," I said. "Execute the contingency, Alistair. And when you go, bring the shareholder agreement. The one my father signed 5 years ago and never actually read." "With pleasure, Brenda," he said. "With pleasure." I ended the call as the elevator doors whispered shut, leaving my family's chaos, and my entire old life, behind me. If you've been listening this far, it would mean the world to me if you'd hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below. It lets me know that you're here with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me to keep sharing. So please, comment with a 1, and let me tell you what happened next. The 45-minute drive home was a blur. I put the car on autopilot and stared out at the city lights, not really seeing them. I didn't cry. I felt hollowed out. Like something broken inside me had finally been scooped out, leaving a clean, empty space. By the time I walked into my penthouse, the comforting scent of lemongrass and clean linen greeting me at the door, the hollowness was beginning to be replaced by a cold, clear anger. I kicked off my painful heels, and they skittered across the polished hardwood floor. The first thing I did was go to the kitchen, pull a bag of frozen peas from the freezer, wrap it in a dish towel, and press it against my throbbing cheek. The intense cold was a relief. My phone, which I'd tossed on the kitchen island, started buzzing incessantly. A text from Alistair. "Entering the building now." I had changed out of the navy silk dress, my armor, and into a soft cashmere sweater and jeans. The armor wasn't needed anymore. The war had moved to a different front, one where I had all the power. I sat on my sofa, the ice pack pressed to my face, and opened my laptop. The internet was on fire. Kevin's younger brother's live stream had been shared over 1,000 times. The slap was already a GIF, a meme. The hashtags #weddingslap and #penthouseWars were trending on Twitter. I watched the clip once. The crack of the slap, the gasp of the crowd. It felt like watching a movie about someone else's life. Alistair texted again, a simple, devastating update. Walking into the ballroom. Walter just saw me. I could picture it perfectly. The chaos in that room, the frantic whispers, my parents trying desperately to regain control. And then, the doors opening, and in walking Alistair Finch. He would be an image of calm, terrifying power in his $10,000 bespoke suit, exuding an aura of authority that could silence a room without him saying a word. Flanking him would be two of our firm's top corporate lawyers, their faces impassive, their expensive briefcases holding my father's ruin. This was the same Alistair Finch my father had been bragging about trying to get a meeting with for 6 months, hoping to secure a partnership that would save his struggling company. Another text message vibrated on the coffee table. His face has gone completely white. And now, yes, your mother is screaming. I stood up and walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows. The city glittered below, a silent, beautiful witness. Somewhere down there, in that grand, ridiculous ballroom, my family was learning that actions have consequences. And that the quiet, disappointing daughter they had underestimated for 32 years had an ally they could never have imagined. My phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, then swiped to answer. Brenda? The voice was a frantic whisper. It was Kevin's younger brother, the amateur videographer who had started it all. Oh my God, you need to see this. Your dad looks like he's going to have a heart attack. This older guy in a suit, he just walked in like he owns the place. He said your name, and then something about, I don't know, partnership agreements? Your mom literally screamed when she saw him. Who is this guy? He's someone who believes in protecting his investments, I said, my voice calm. Your dad keeps muttering Mr. Finch over and over again. Is this the Alistair Finch? The one who owns Finch Capital? I have to go, I said, and ended the call before he could ask any more questions. My phone immediately rang again. This time, the caller ID read Alistair Finch. You're on speaker, Brenda, he said the moment I answered. His voice was perfectly clear, cutting through the background noise. I'm here with your parents and their remaining guests. They seem to have some confusion about your professional standing. I could hear the shocked, electric silence on the other end of the line. Walter, Alistair's voice was not loud, but it commanded the attention of every person in that room. It was the voice of a man who managed billions of dollars and didn't suffer fools. I feel it's my duty to clarify something for you and everyone present. Brenda Hayes is not, as I believe you've implied for years, some mid-level manager at my company. I could hear a collective, sharp intake of breath through the phone speaker. That's impossible, my father's voice came through, thin and reedy, a pale imitation of his earlier booming confidence. On the contrary, Alistair said, his tone dangerously smooth. Brenda is our Vice President of Development. She manages our firm's entire Asia-Pacific expansion, a portfolio valued at over $2 billion. The Singapore real estate deal that netted our firm $40 million in profit last year? That was Brenda's deal. She led it from start to finish. The new Tokyo office that has become our most profitable international branch in less than a year? Brenda built that from the ground up, on time and under budget. He paused. The exclusive partnership with Samsung, the one your company put in a bid for and was rejected? Brenda single-handedly negotiated every last detail of that contract. You're lying. That was my mother's voice, a shrill, desperate shriek that was quickly silenced. Mrs. Hayes, Alistair said, his voice dropping to an icy calm. I can assure you, I do not lie, especially when it comes to my most valuable executives. The penthouse you so publicly tried to extort from your daughter tonight? That was a small part of her executive compensation package. A signing bonus for her recent promotion. A package that, I should mention, includes certain legal protections against third-party interference and coercion. Our company takes the well-being of our leadership very seriously. What protections? Dad stammered. Furthermore, Alistair continued, ignoring him, as someone who owns a significant stake in your company, Walter, I am deeply, profoundly concerned about the gross lapse in judgment you have displayed tonight. The silence on the other end was so absolute it felt like a physical presence. A stake in my company? What are you talking about? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Perhaps you should have read the fine print, Alistair said. The lawyers were clearly now laying out documents on the head table. Page 47 of the private equity agreement you signed 5 years ago when your company was on the verge of collapse and desperate for a capital injection. I am your silent partner, Walter. I own 40% of your company. And tonight, I am no longer being silent. Publicly attempting to coerce your own daughter, allowing your wife to physically assault her on a live video stream that has now, I see, been viewed over 20,000 times, this triggers clause 15.3 of our shareholder agreement. He let the words hang in the air. The clause pertaining to moral turpitude and conduct unbecoming of a company officer. This is extortion. Mom shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. No, Mrs. Hayes, Alistair corrected her, his voice cutting like a surgeon's scalpel. Extortion was demanding your daughter's $2 million home in front of 200 witnesses. This is simply consequence management. Brenda. My father's voice came through the phone, no longer angry or condescending, but pleading. It was the voice of a broken man. Brenda, please. Tell him to stop. This is a family matter. This is going too far. For the first time since leaving the ballroom, I let a flicker of my own anger show. Too far? I finally spoke, my voice clear and strong, broadcasting my defiance to the whole room. Was it too far when you planned to ambush me? Was it too far when Mom said I didn't deserve my home because I don't have a family? Or was it slapping your daughter across the face at her sister's wedding that wasn't too far? You can't destroy our family business over a misunderstanding, he begged. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice as cold and hard as the marble on my kitchen floor. I am not destroying anything. I am protecting my assets and my dignity. Alistair is protecting his investment. If your behavior threatens that investment, that is entirely on you. I could hear someone in the background whispering frantically, the video is everywhere. It's on the local news website. Here is what is going to happen, Alistair announced, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. Walter, you have 48 hours to issue a formal, public apology to Brenda. A real one, written by you, acknowledging her professional achievements and her absolute right to her own property. Brenda, you will do the same, and you will agree to stay away from Brenda permanently. No calls, no texts, no visits. Or, he paused, letting the threat land, I will call an emergency board meeting. Given that I control 40% and the Jensen Trust, which controls another 15%, is very interested in this situation, I believe you can do the math. I will exercise my options as the majority shareholder, and I will pull every cent of my capital out of your company. Without it, you're looking at bankruptcy within 6 months. The choice is yours. The line went dead. I stood in my penthouse, in the profound silence, looking out at the city that I had conquered. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt truly, completely free. The fallout was immediate, and it was brutal. Within the next 2 hours, my phone became a ticker tape of my family's implosion. My mother, true to form, sent a barrage of texts, you have ruined everything. Your sister's wedding is destroyed. The guests are leaving in droves. Are you happy now, Brenda? Are you satisfied? My father's message was just 3 words, we need to talk. Please. But the truly devastating blows came from outside the family. Emails started coming in, forwarded to me by a contact still at the wedding. From Jim Patterson of Patterson Industries, one of my father's oldest clients, Walter, I am shocked and appalled by what I witnessed tonight, both in person and on the viral video my wife just showed me. We need to seriously discuss the future of our contract. From David Kim of Kim Electronics, this is deeply troubling behavior. My company's ethics clause is very clear. My wife is insisting we reconsider our long-term partnership. And the final, fatal shot, from Sarah Williams of Williams Logistics, their biggest account, I don't do business with men who think it's acceptable to bully and assault their own children. Our $3 million annual contract is hereby terminated, effective immediately. Kevin's family was in full retreat. His mother posted in the family group chat, which I hadn't yet been removed from. We are leaving immediately. This is a disgraceful and shocking display. We need to reassess this entire union. 47 hours later, just under the wire, my father's public apology appeared on his company's website. It was stilted, awkward, and clearly vetted by a lawyer, but it met Alistair's terms. My mother, however, refused. She went on a rambling, self-pitying Facebook rant about her ungrateful, selfish daughter, which was promptly screenshotted and shared thousands of times, mostly with comments like, "The apple didn't fall far from the toxic tree." The following Monday morning, Alistair called me into his spacious corner office. The view was almost as good as mine. He gestured for me to sit down. The board held an emergency session over the weekend, he said, getting straight to the point. He pushed a folder across the polished mahogany desk towards me. They want to promote you. I blinked, confused. Promote me? Senior Vice President of Global Operations, he said. The Asia-Pacific success was already grounds for it. But frankly, the way you handled yourself under extreme duress, they were impressed. I got slapped at a wedding in front of 200 people, I said, the absurdity of it hitting me. That impressed them? Brenda, he said, leaning forward. You stood your ground against immense social and emotional pressure. You protected a significant company asset, your compensation package, from illegal coercion. You maintained your composure and made a strategic decision under fire. That's not just impressive, that's exactly the kind of leadership this firm needs at the highest level. The promotion came with a 40% raise and a substantial package of stock options, enough to buy another penthouse if I ever wanted one. The first thing I did was call my financial advisor and arrange to donate the entirety of my raise bonus to a women's shelter, one that provided legal aid and housing for victims of domestic abuse leaving toxic family situations. It felt like the only right thing to do. The days that followed were a quiet storm of change. I hired a locksmith to change the locks on my penthouse. I gave my building's head of security a short, clear list of names who were permanently banned from the property. My parents and Heather were at the top. The doorman, James, a kind man who had seen me come home exhausted at all hours of the night for years, pulled me aside one evening. "Miss Hayes," he said quietly. I saw the video. My daughter went through something similar with her in-laws. Good for you. For standing up for yourself. His simple words of support from a near stranger meant more to me than any apology from my family ever could. The most unexpected update came a few weeks later. Heather's marriage to Kevin had lasted exactly 4 months. His family had insisted on premarital counseling after the wedding disaster, and the sessions had apparently unearthed some deep-seated issues. A therapist's report, which was anonymously leaked to me by a sympathetic cousin, mentioned Heather's profound sense of entitlement, her inability to accept personal responsibility, and a deeply ingrained expectation that her needs should be met by others without effort on her part. The divorce was quiet but final. I blocked my immediate family on all platforms. There was no dramatic announcement, no final confrontation. It was just the quiet, simple, powerful act of removing their access to my life. My work became my focus, and my colleagues at Finch Capital became my real family. We celebrated wins with champagne and supported each other through losses with late-night pizza. Alistair and his wife started inviting me to their family dinners. His 2 college-aged daughters looked up to me. "You're proof we don't have to shrink ourselves to make other people comfortable," the older one told me one night over dinner. Her words were a balm on a wound I didn't even know was still there. It's been 6 months since that disastrous wedding. 6 months since I drew a line in the sand and chose myself. The dust has settled into a new reality, one that is quieter, calmer, and infinitely more peaceful. I am thriving. My new role as Senior VP has been challenging and rewarding in ways I couldn't have imagined. It led to a feature in Forbes 40 Under 40, a small article focusing on my innovative approaches to market expansion. My family wasn't mentioned. My father's company survived, but it's a shadow of its former self. He had to sell off 2 divisions and lay off a third of his staff. Through mutual business contacts, I heard he's aged 10 years. Someone mentioned he'd started going to therapy. Too little, too late for me, but I suppose it's something. My mother has doubled down on her victim narrative, painting herself as the heartbroken matriarch of a family torn apart by a greedy, ungrateful daughter. But the video is still out there. Most people know better. I learned some hard lessons from that day. I learned that blood doesn't make you family. Respect, trust, and unconditional support make you family. I learned that success isn't something you owe to people who never once cheered you on during the climb. And I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to a toxic family is nothing at all, just the quiet, final click of a door closing behind you. My penthouse is still my sanctuary. Every morning, I stand at these windows, with my coffee in hand, and watch the sun rise over the city. I am grateful for the quiet. Grateful for the peace I fought so hard to protect. This place is more than just property. It's a daily reminder that I chose myself when everyone in my world expected me to choose them. And I would make that choice again, 1,000 times over. If you're out there, listening to this, and you are struggling with a family who demands more than they give, who takes credit for successes they didn't support, who expects you to light yourself on fire just to keep them warm, please hear me, your boundaries matter. Your success is yours alone. And your peace of mind is worth more than their conditional approval. You do not owe anyone your hard-earned achievements just because you happen to share DNA. You do not have to accept disrespect in the name of a hollow family harmony. And you certainly do not have to tolerate abuse, whether it's a physical slap or the slow, emotional erosion of your self-worth over years. The price of my freedom was high. I lost the family I was born with. But what I gained was priceless: self-respect, genuine relationships, and a life, finally, built on my own terms. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your peace, please know that you are not alone. Share this story with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to finally choose yourself. Please hit that like button if my story resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories. Remember, your peace is non-negotiable. Thank you for being here with me today.